बंद कर दीजिएगा। Hello and welcome to the featured discussion for today, that is 20th of September 2021. Welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel as well. My name is Harsh Singh. I will take the featured news for today. The featured news for today is on the mini-laterals in the Indo-Pacific. Now, around the world, we have seen the organizations which have global significance. One very good example of this is United Nations, right? Organizations which have yielded, for example, Montreal Protocol, right? So these type of multilateral and global deals have been seen in the past that later yielded to multilateral organizations. These multilateral organizations, good examples of this are NATO. One good example is East Asia Summit. We have SAARC, we have ASEAN. We have so many multilateral organizations which have been working around the world. And now, lately, we have started to see the increased presence of mini-laterals. Now, this is the type of word which will puzzle you in the exam. When the exam asks you what are mini-laterals and what is the significance, this is the kind of question that will puzzle you. And let me talk a little about mini-laterals. These are those small organizations which have the constituent members 2, 3, 4 in size. They have purposeful agenda and they are made only for ad hoc purposes. They are voluntary in nature and their purpose is very much targeted. So whereas United Nations is about global reforms, whereas multilateral organizations are about regional reforms, multilateral is highly focused, right? So we have seen increase in the presence of these mini-lateral organizations. One very small and good example of this is the present AUKUS, right? So we are talking of Australia, UK and USA, right? USA. So this organization is a mini-lateral. It has a purposeful small agenda. Similarly, we have seen various organizations, for example, the Abraham Accords. Now these accords were between Israel, Bahrain and UAE, right? Those countries which considered each other as enemies, these Gulf nations versus Israel, now they have formed a mini-lateral organization, right? Similarly, India has formed BBIN, right? So we are talking of India, Bhutan, Bangladesh and Nepal, right, for corridor of movement of people, etc. Similarly, we have seen there are multilateral organizations which are going out of shape. One good example is SCO. Another good example is the presence of SAARC, right, all dysfunctional. So countries have started to form smaller organizations for even more purposeful agenda, right? Global organizations, in fact, they are almost redundant now. United Nations, despite of the countries asking for increased number of reforms, expanding the United Nations, it is not happening. So that is why, to increase their agenda, the countries have started to form the mini-lateral organizations. This is the context in which United States, UK and Australia also formed a mini-lateral. This mini-lateral had a purposeful agenda of increased presence in the Indo-Pacific area to counter China to have freedom of navigation as per the international laws, right? So you can see very well the difference in membership. The difference in membership is that global have high membership, then we have multilaterals, few countries, and mini-laterals, very few number of countries. Targeted, right? So target is very much, mini-laterals are very much targeted and focused. Then they can be ad hoc or voluntary, only for a small time, and then they work with a critical mass. That means minimum number of countries required, and then they go ahead. One good mini-lateral example is the Quad, right? So this is how we can differentiate between these three organizations, right? So the featured news talks about the increased presence of mini-laterals in the present era. Now, what is the reason that these mini-laterals have started to form? One important reason is the inertia and stagnation of the large bodies. If United Nations is not working, if SCO, we are talking of Shanghai Cooperation Organization, if it is not working well, then we will have to form a smaller organization. Right now in SCO, Russia's and China's aims could be very much different to what India thinks. For example, China is aiding Taliban. India is neutral to it. Now, what about Brics? So when we talk of Brics, we have countries like Brazil and South Africa. They are completely unrelated to the crisis in Afghanistan. So therefore, we see probably RIC. This could be a mini-lateral. So this is why for increasing the strategic alliance again, this is the reason that we have got formed this kind of mini-lateral organization, strategic alliance. One good example again is the presence of we are talking of the one which happened in between the Arab states and Israel. So we are talking of Abraham Accords, right? So when exam has questions, you have to present these kind of examples. So for strategic alliances between Israel, Bahrain and UAE, for better tourism, better movement of people and movement of goods, they formed this alliance. So this was a departure from their Gulf Cooperation Council. Gulf Cooperation Council was a regional organization, and Abraham Accord is a mini-lateral, right? Now, geopolitical rivalry. One good example is the present context. We have formed the organization AUKUS, and this is rivalry with China. So this is one. Information and communication technology. Since there is more technology, more communication happening between countries, and now digital mode of communication, why not increase partnerships, right? So this is one of the reasons why these countries have initiated the mini-laterals. That is the word, right? And capacity constraints. So when countries are into humanitarian assistance and disaster management, HADR, when countries are fighting piracy, when countries are fighting terrorism, and there needs to be a regional alliance, right? So this is the time when all the countries come together and they form a mini-lateral, right? This is the reason why mini-laterals have come into existence. Some important reasons, either you can take a screenshot of this or you can write them down at some particular place. If you are not noting down what we talk about here daily, we talk about around 14 articles every day, including the Gazette and featured news. If you don't note that down, then you will forget in due course, right? We are not superhuman beings. And that is why if you don't know how to make notes, I'll prepare a video on that. But right now, you can scribble it. Even if you scribble it at some place, it will help you in just memorizing it. So this is it. Now, there are two sides of this also. One is the good side and the other one is not so good side. So the better side is that it leads to balance of power, right? So on one hand, when Gulf nations were too powerful against one country, that is Israel, now when Bahrain and UAE also are on this side, there is a balance of power, right? When Egypt also changed sides and had its treaty with Israel in 1970s, then there was a balance of power in Middle East region. Similarly, when AUKUS is formed, with respect to China, there is an increased balance of power in South China Sea, right? So countries like Vietnam, countries like Malaysia, countries like Philippines, Taiwan, they will not have to fear China anymore. So balance of power, this is one. Mini-laterals. The second one is increased level of partnership. Yes, they will cause more partnership, and this is good for the regional organizations, the countries in those domains. But what are the disadvantages? It will diminish the impact of the multilateral organizations. Why will people want to be in multilaterals when the mini-laterals are already working well, right? This is one thing. The second one is the compliance of these mini-laterals. Now, these are informal organizations largely, and therefore it is not necessary for the participants to obey the order. When there are more participants, they ensure more accountability. So this is one important constraint of the mini-lateral. And in context of this, our whole featured news for today is based on this itself, right? So we are talking in specific about United States, United Kingdom and Australia, and their presence is causing a counter to China, right? So what is a mini-lateral, right? All the 4 points that we presented, that it is targeted organization, it is informal in nature, they have the minimum threshold energy required, critical mass required, right? So earlier in the 1940s also we had a mini-lateral. It was called as Five Eyes, right? And before it was a part of US-UK. So the story goes like this, that during the time of Second World War, United States of America and UK, they used to have some secret meetings to decode and encrypt certain kind of codes, right? War related. And this is when 3 more countries joined them. We had Canada, we had Australia, and we had New Zealand. So we are talking of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, USA, and UK. So these 5, and Canada, not UK and Canada. So these 5 countries formed a Five-Eye group. This group was one of the mini-laterals right back in 1940s, and something very similar has gotten initiated again, right? Now, this is how we talk about the mini-laterals. Now, what is most important thing to understand? Trying to counter the issues and also balancing it with the development of the region. The idea must be to ensure that minilaterals do not compete with multilaterals. They do not compete with the global organizations. The idea should be minilaterals should complement the global organizations. So we are talking of issues like climate change, issues like trade negotiations and security cooperation. So when minilaterals start to impact, they will only complement the multilateral treaties. They will only complement what is United Nations doing. So the main idea should be the minilateral should be cooperating rather than competing, right? So this is how you can conclude with a wider wisdom your answer on this, right? Now, after having understood the various aspects of a minilateral organization, for example, the various aspects of minilateral could be what are its issues, what are its advantages, right? What is the meaning of multilateral? After having understood various aspects of it, all you could do is attempt this question. The question says, discuss the reasons for growth of minilaterals in the Indo-Pacific region. What can be the possible impact of rise of minilaterals, right? So this is the featured discussion for today. Now, if in case you have any doubts, you can post them and I would be able to, I'd be happy to help you. So Sam, hello again. IS Minister, hello to you. Sir, could you make a video on how to make notes? Absolutely. So we will make a video on how to make notes, and on the basis of this, especially for current affairs, on the basis of this, you will be able to not only revise them. The basis of this, just in the limited time, 15 minutes, not only will you be able to revise them, you will also be able to revise them and memorize them. And after that, just before the exam, have a final check on this, right? So it serves three purposes. One, to make notes. Second, to revise them. And third, reproduction in the exam and memorizing, right? So I have drawn too many circles, but yes, I will definitely make a video on this, right? So all I would like you to do is, if you like this video, share some love on us through likes, comments, and shares. If you subscribe to the channel, you will receive this video on time, that is at 6:30 p.m. every evening, Monday to Friday. Thanks for watching.